हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी.
Hare Krishna. Okay, let us start with our prayers while the other devotees are joining. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Ram Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नाम नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाचार्य आचार्यं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्री गुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम. हरे कृष्ण. So we'll continue our discussion from where we left off. Let me just flash the PDF. Let me know when you can see it. Is it visible already? Yeah, okay, it's visible. Okay, I believe the preaching part we have already completed. I'm just again trying to refresh myself. Yeah, this one we had discussed. Yeah, I think this also we discussed. If I'm not wrong, we have to continue from here, from the prasadam part. Is that correct? Or did we discuss this?
The prasadam part not discussed.
Not discussed, right? Okay, fine. Okay, so this prasadam part, of course, we have discussed earlier in various parts. So, first, what is the meaning of the word prasad? Prasad means the grace of the Lord. So, as a part of our advancement in Krishna consciousness, the devotee tries to see everything in relation to the Lord. And he expresses gratitude to everything that he receives from the Lord. And because one of the main items that any human being consumes is food. And because that food is coming by the grace of the Lord and through his arrangement, the devotee offers his gratitude to the Lord as well as his love to the Lord by offering whatever he cooks first to the Lord for the Lord's enjoyment, and then only accepts the remnants as prasad. This principle has been explained in the Bhagavad Gita also. Yajna shishto shino santam uchante sarvakil vishayhi bhunjate de tvagam papa ye pachanti atmakarma. That the saintly people become purified from all sins by taking the remnants of yajna, food which is offered to the Lord. But those who eat for their own enjoyment simply eat sin. So that is the principle, and that is why the standard expected from the scriptures is that a devotee should ideally eat only Krishna Prasad, which means food that has been offered to Lord Krishna with devotion. So what is that ideal standard? Ideally, one should eat food that is cooked by devotees, offered to the Lord by devotees, and served by devotees. Why? Because in each of these transactions, cooking, offering, and serving, one's consciousness is actively involved and it affects the food in a positive or negative way. That is why it is important that one should come close to this standard as practically possible, given the limitations of city life and the needs of preaching. So this is what we should work towards. Of course, when we are traveling, if we are not in a position to cook, then some of these items may not be of the perfect standard, but one should generally avoid. So the best standard is, unless absolutely necessary for preaching or for seva, food cooked by non-devotees should be avoided. Again, why to be avoided? Because when it is cooked, the consciousness of the person who is cooking enters the food, and when it enters the food, it actually affects our consciousness subtly. In fact, many times, even sinful thoughts, sinful desires, disturbances, emotional states are transferred from one person to another simply by the food cooked by one person and eaten by another person. And that is why in ancient times you would see that the Brahmanas and the saintly people would be so careful about who food cooked by whom they are willing to consume. Sometimes this is seen as a discrimination, sometimes this is seen as a caste consciousness. They are considering this as low and untouchable. But the original principle of all this kind of caution was based on the principle that if a person is of pure behavior, then the food cooked by him will have good consciousness. And after offering to the Lord, it will become prasad, and then it will be good for my spiritual practice. So in the same spirit, because food which is cooked as commercial items in factories, biscuits, chocolates, breads, etc., is obviously not following the standard which we have discussed here. So it is not in the best standard. So it is not A class, but sometimes in our homes, we may take them, but even if we take them, we should offer it to the Lord and take. So it may not be ticking all the three factors, but best is to minimize them. Even for guests, the recommendation is it is best to offer freshly cooked homemade items, and also offer, rather than offering sodas and cold drinks, offer drinks like lemon water, fruit juice, etc. Of course, while traveling, certain times commercial items such as biscuits, breads may become essential. So whenever such situations happen, then one should offer them to the Lord and pray to the Lord. Sometimes offering may not be possible literally by keeping in front of the picture, but at least one should remember the Lord and say Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. That is the minimum standard to be followed. And of course, that can also be done only for vegetarian food. We cannot do that and offer forbidden foodstuffs. Of course, the recommendation is still that even while traveling, wherever possible, if we can carry foods, that is even better. Because consciousness in processed items is again considered not so good. Processed items being stored and added with preservatives come in the category of tamasic food. And Bhagavad Gita says tamasic food is to be avoided. So even when one has to eat somewhere outside, one should be careful to choose a vegetarian place, and especially those who are initiated should be careful to order items without onion or garlic. So this is caution to be taken. Also, in general, while eating prasadam, one should be careful. Even within the sattvic fold, if something, even within the prasad fold, if the prasad should be sattvic, which means even though one may not use onion and garlic, sometimes if the taste is too spicy, too oily, too rich, then the food becomes rajasic, even though the ingredients are sattvic. So that is another thing. And rajasic food disturbs one's mind, agitates one's senses. So that should be controlled. So moderation in taste is the best formula. So even at home, the recommendation is whatever is cooked must be offered properly to the Lord. So at home, please do not do Vishnu, 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 unless there is a very special situation that needs you to do that. But generally, whatever is consumed in the home should first be offered to the Lord. So even if it is milk which is coming on a daily basis, offer it to the Lord. Fruits, milk, and obviously the food cooked, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever is there, offer it to the Lord. At home, there is no real strictness that you have to do only 3 offerings and in a particular way. You can offer as many times at home. It's not a problem. Also, to be mindful that prasadam should not be wasted. So take only what you need on your plate, and if something excess is served on your plate, keep it aside so that it doesn't get wasted. Wasting of prasad is offensive. Sanapra. Yeah, so of course, after the family has eaten, if there is still some food left, best is to cook exactly as much as needed, but that may not always work out. So it may be retained for the next meal, or it may be distributed to guests or elsewhere. Don't preserve cooked items for too long, even if it is preserved in the fridge, because it slowly but surely deteriorates into the lower modes. Eating should be with right hand, not with left hand. Nowadays, very common for people to also use the left hand. That should be avoided. While serving prasad also, the serving spoon that one is serving in should not touch the plate from which somebody is eating, and should be careful, otherwise it will become jhuta. If accidentally it touches, you should wash the spoon or take a fresh one. Another rule of eating prasadam is eating in moderation and preferably at fixed times of the day. Overeating and eating the wrong kinds of food is not good for spiritual life, and it's also not good for the health. So body as well as mind becomes disturbed when one's eating habits are disturbed, or when eating is not moderate and not sattvic. So the essential point is that when we control our diet, our tongue becomes controlled. And controlling the tongue means controlling taste and controlling speech. When the tongue is controlled, automatically the other senses become easy to control. This is the secret. Prabhupada mentions this in Nectar of Instruction also. The tongue is very difficult to control, but the tongue should be the first to control. By speaking Hari Katha, chanting Hare Krishna, and by eating prasad. Once the sense of tongue is controlled, most of the other senses are not so difficult. Before honoring prasad, one should chant the prayers honoring the prasad. So those prayers are already given in Appendix 6. We'll not go into those prayers right now, but maybe many of you may have heard. We usually sing the 2 prayers. We say Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Salpa Punyavatam Rajan Vishwaso Naiva Jayate. This is a shlok from the Mahabharata, which is glorifying Mahaprasad. And also the other prayer which is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sharira Vidya Jal Jadindita. So you can look up we will probably, when we go through the appendix, we'll go through those prayers also quickly. But please remember, before accepting prasad, before honoring prasad, the right word is honor, not eat. We generally don't say eat, we say honor prasad. Because we don't want to have the consciousness that we are eating food, because we don't treat it as food. We treat the remnants of the Lord as prasad, and we honor that prasad by consuming it. because it is edible. We honor it by putting it in our mouth and taking it into our mouth. And in that way, we get purified. So prasadam must be honored with the consciousness that it is Krishna's mercy, that it is non-different from him. And that is why to offer proper respect to prasad, the general standard, recommended standard to be followed is one must, unless one is actively preaching to somebody, one must generally try to take prasad in a very calm, undisturbed manner. One wants in the background to have some kirtan or lecture going on and then quietly honors prasad in a meditative mood, that is also fine. So we also discussed about the consciousness of, the considerations of Mahaprasad. So whatever bhoga is offered to the deities on the plate of the deities after the offering is completed, that becomes Mahaprasad. So generally Mahaprasad can either be mixed with the prasad or it may be distributed to the guests. Of course, the Lord's plate needs to be washed and after that everybody can honor the prasad. The best standard is to serve hot prasad to all our guests as per the requirements, which means sometimes for the purpose of offering, one is making puris and chapatis. One may make 1 or 2 puris or 2 puris or 4 puris and offer it to the Lord. And upfront, a couple of chapatis and offer them to the Lord, a couple of pakodas and offer them to the Lord. But then later, when the guests and the devotees are eating, the rest of the puris, pakodas, chapatis can be made fresh from the same batter or the same dough. In that way, when we serve the guests also, we ensure that we are serving them hot food. So it is not necessary that everything has to be cooked and completed, especially in items like chapatis, pakodas. It's not necessary that all has to be cooked first and then only it should be offered. So even as the first batch is done, offering can happen immediately and one can either continue to make them or one can make them at a later time when the devotees are just about to honor prasad. So that is acceptable. So it is best to serve hot, fresh food. Also, it is generally recommended that the seniors, when we serve food, we should wait for the seniors to start honoring the food first and only then we should eat. This is the general standard. This is generally the expectation, especially when gurus and sannyasis are there. But in general also, if there are senior devotees, then when the senior devotee starts, the others start. Even in traditional families earlier in India, everybody would sit together to eat. The eldest member of the family, when they wait for him to start, as soon as he eats, everyone else eats. Or when there's a guru or sannyasi or a leader, when the leader eats, everybody else starts. So the general culture is we start eating together and we finish eating together. And this is especially true when we are sitting down together to eat. Yeah, of course, nowadays the buffet system makes it very difficult because then there is no real rule which can be followed. But when we sit in a pankti, which is a traditional Indian way of sitting down, the best way is everyone recites the prayer together. The eldest member starts eating, then all others start, then everybody finishes. Of course, even though technically everybody cannot finish eating at the same time, all others, those who finish early, wait for the rest of them to finish and then everybody gets up together. That is the ideal standard. And this standard was followed in India even for weddings and festivities and other things, when devotees or even guests from cultured families would come together and have a meal. This culture is fast disappearing now, but I have seen this observed in almost all my all the functions, ceremonies where I have attended in my early childhood. So this is the basic standard. Guru's Mahaprasad should not be distributed in the presence of newcomers, sometimes disturbs them. The other thing is, after one has begun eating, because the hand, the right hand with which one is eating has become contaminated, one should not touch anything else with one's right hand until one has finished and rinsed and cleansed one's right hand. Also, after having eaten, one must wash one's hands, feet, mouth, and one should not start distributing prasad until that time. And also, one should not take prasadam in the view of public. So while in walking down streets or while in procession. So the culture of prasad is to sit down privately, peacefully, and honor it. So that one shows the proper respect. That is the idea. It shows proper respect to us. Any questions so far?
No problem. It's good.
Okay, good. So I think we can do the kitchen part also quickly because it is in relation to prasad. So kitchen has a very special place in our devotional tradition. The understanding is that kitchen and altar are very closely related. The altar means Garbha Graha, where the Lord's deities are placed and where actual worship is performed. The kitchen is considered an extension of the altar. In fact, in both traditional temples as well as ISKCON temples, the kitchen is practically just next to the Garbha Griha. Of course, in some places it may, because of various reasons, be away. Even if it is there, then it is very strict standards of who can enter into the kitchen, who can cook in the kitchen. All these things are maintained because the standards in the kitchen, ideally, and especially I'm talking about temple kitchen, ideally should be followed at the same level as what is followed in the altar. Properly after having taken bath, wearing clean clothes, after having done achman, one enters the kitchen. So that is the right standard. When I was either cooking or assisting in the cooking in the deity kitchen, in the temples, in ISKCON, whether in Chowpatty or in Kuala Lumpur, always we follow that standard of fresh, clean clothes, having taken a bath, and then one does achman, one offers obeisances, takes blessings of Radharani, then starts one seva of cooking. Because when we cook for the Lord, the seva of cooking for the Lord is actually a very, very intimate special seva. Who actually cooks for the Lord in the spiritual world? Either Mother Yashoda or Radharani. So when we cook for the Lord, for the deities, we are actually cooking or doing a seva which is Radharani's seva. So devotees are supposed to have that consciousness that I am assisting Radharani and Mother Yashoda to cook this meal for Krishna. That is the consciousness. It requires a very special meditation. Of course, at home also when we cook, we should try to maintain this devotional standard. That is why it is best before starting the cooking process to remember the spiritual master, to pray to them, to pray to Radha and Krishna, and say that I am about to do this service for your pleasure. Then one develops the right consciousness. So here it mentions in point 2 that wherever deities in temples are installed, obviously the standard we followed is very high and strict. At house, it may not be so possible, but the general standard is avoid eating in the kitchen or in front of the deities. So, of course, wherever a separate kitchen exists as a separate room, then one must try to follow that standard. In very compact homes where kitchen and dining room is in the same place, that may not be practical to follow, but that is the best standard. Because wherever we eat, the eating, because of jajuta, produces a contaminating effect. So it is best not done near the kitchen space. That is the idea behind it. So householders like us should try to come close to this standard as possible. That is why generally devotees also try to keep a separate sink for cook and cooking vessels and a separate sink for washing the juta vessels. In fact, traditionally, the juta vessels are washed totally separately from the kitchen. They're not even brought into the kitchen. So that is the ideal standard. Of course, in an apartment culture, that may not always be possible. But again, we should try to see how close one can come to this standard as possible. About clothes, we have already discussed contaminated clothes must be avoided. Generally, one must be clean in terms of the hair and nails because one is cooking. One should not drop dirt or infection from one's nails. So, personal hygiene of the cooks is important. Wash your hands, feet, face, rinse your mouth before entering the kitchen. In temple, of course, a bath is mandatory. In the kitchen proper, one should not rinse one's mouth, especially in the kitchen sink. So, like what we said, the juta aspect should be avoided from the kitchen as far as possible. The other thing is one should avoid tasting anything in the kitchen as is being cooked, because we want to offer it for the Lord's pleasure. The right standard in such a case is actually to not taste, first offer it to the Lord, and only after that. So what we generally do is, of course, the best thing is to be very careful while cooking so that one is conscious of all the items. One knows whether one has put salt rather than wondering, oh, did I put or did I not put? That means you are not very conscious while cooking. Also, additionally, on the plate, when we offer to the Lord, oftentimes devotees, especially in temple, we always do that. But otherwise, also, if one is doubtful, one can place a little bit of salt next to the food so that, if there is something less, then, the salt is also there. So that is what also devotees often do. We spoke about the vessels. So cooking vessels are generally not mixed and, cleansed together with the vessels from where we eat from. The others are general rules of cleanliness, which I think are quite common sense. If one has some infectious disease, one should not either come into the kitchen or come in contact with the kitchen paraphernalia. If one touches the floor, dustbin, or a lower part of one's body, then the hand becomes unclean. Obviously, one should not, in such a case, without washing the hand, engaging in any activities in the kitchen. Also, best is not to talk in the kitchen. Best is to just, in an absorbed mood, be involved in the cooking. And after having completed the cooking, one must clean the stove, sink, everything very nicely. So kitchen being like an altar should also be maintained spick and span. That is the expectation. One should work carefully but efficiently and avoid cluttering. Anything that has fallen to the floor cannot be put on the tables. But however, if a vegetable before cooking falls down, then one can just wash it, rinse it, and then use it. But cooked items, if they fall on the floor, we don't offer that to the Lord. So what that means, accidentally, if a puri or a chapati falls to the floor, you don't have to throw it in the dustbin. You don't offer that item to the Lord. Of course, if it falls in an absolute dirt, you may have to dispose it. But otherwise, you may dust it and keep it aside. If some family member wants to eat it, that's okay. But don't put it on the plate of the Lord. If one has gone to the toilet, one must take bath. This is especially important when cooking in the temple. At home also, it's best to follow this standard. Especially be careful that hair doesn't fall in and contaminates the office. So this is very, very important, especially in temple environments. At home also, but especially in temple environments, be very careful. There's oftentimes ladies who cook in temples wear a hair cap so that they are careful that the hair doesn't fall. Because it's very easy for the hair to drop into a dal or a curry or sabji. Sometimes even chapati, inside chapatis you'll find a hair. The Mahaprasad of the Lord, which is in the plate of the deities, cannot be directly eaten from the Lord's plate. So the proper way is transfer it to another vessel, wash the Lord's Mahaprasad, the plate, the Lord's offering plate, and then only consume the Mahaprasad. Okay. Any questions? Into the other part. We can continue there. So here we have already come almost to the appendix. It's good. We are making good progress. This part we have covered. Co-regulative principles, association with devotees, avoiding non-devotees. Did we cover the part of reading? I'm not very sure. Anybody remembers?
No problem.
No, right? Okay, fine. So I'll just continue from here. So this is coming back to the sadhana part. So we have discussed extensively about japa. Now this is about reading. So it is recommended that devotees should daily read Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. Initially, for newer devotees, if they want, they can start by reading the small books of Srila Prabhupada, such as Perfect Question, Perfect Answers, Krishna Consciousness, The Matchless Gift, Nectar of Instruction, etc. It is not necessary for devotees to read other books. So the emphasis must be on reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Other books are extra, but Prabhupada's books are very important because they are foundational for our Krishna consciousness. Also, reading spiritual literature is not like reading a film magazine or a tabloid. It is done with great serious intent of learning and understanding and deeply contemplating on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. That is why reading must be done in a serious and attentive and systematic way. Best, as we are reading, if we make notes so that we can organize various concepts and ideas in our mind, and in that way we are able to retain them. You must always remember that when we understand philosophy properly, our mind and intelligence becomes fixed on Krishna, and it becomes easier to practice Krishna consciousness. Siddhanta baliya chitte na karho alas, iha hoite Krishna lage sudruda manas. This is the opinion of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Do not be lazy to understand philosophy properly. Because unless the mind is actually convinced, it will not take with seriously the activities of devotional service. That is the truth. So we just discussed this. Reading is important to improve our philosophical understanding, and it increases our conviction, faith, and determination. And that is why for those who are preaching, it is even more important to read regularly. So best is to read regularly. Even if one doesn't spend a long time in reading, it's a good idea to spend at least 20 minutes odd to read Prabhupada's books. And when we reading is also inclusive of hearing. Reading is like hearing. Because in hearing, we are hearing from the ears, but in reading, usually reading is more absorbing, because when a person reads himself, he reads with great intention. Sometimes when we are hearing, our hearing is not so focused and absorbed. But otherwise, technically, there is no difference. Of course, if you are hearing from great souls, and that is extremely even more powerful than our own reading, if that hearing is done with very in a very absorbed manner, in a focused way. Otherwise, reading includes hearing. And a lot of material of our hearing is also generally available. This is talking about lectures. Nowadays, of course, everything is available online. So much of content in MP3 format, so much on YouTube. So there is no dearth of material for hearing and reading. Even all the books that we are talking about are available online. They are available within apps. So actually there is no reason to not read. If we want to read, one can easily squeeze time to read Srila Prabhupada's books. So much time we spent on WhatsApp, chats, phone calls. So not having time is not actually a valid reason. So reading is important. So the the key learning in this particular topic is read Gita, Bhagavatam, or one of the small books of Prabhupada on a regular basis. Try to keep a schedule. The best thing is that after one's morning Aarti, Puja, one can spend some time reading the Gita or Bhagavad. That is best. If that is not possible in the evening, also that is. At our home, we do it in the evening when the family, everybody is together. So we get together and read either some Prabhupada book. So next item is devotional service. So along with reading, japa is also important for devotees to practically engage in some service for the Lord. So try to assist. So one should try to engage in some specific seva for the mission of the spiritual master. So one can discuss with one's teachers, spiritual teachers and counselors as to how one can engage himself. The sevas may be related to temple or other programs, whatever way, if one engages. Because by engaging in seva, because bhakti is about engaging in seva. So all our japa, reading, everything should somehow culminate or translate into practical service for the Lord. So one should look for some seva. Giving lectures is also a seva. Those who want to do that, that is wonderful. Sevas can be in the form of distributing books, selling books, spiritual paraphernalia, that's also seva. Seva can be in terms of going to the temple and assisting in the kitchen cooking, that's also seva. Any kind of endeavor in connection to Krishna and the maintenance and management of the affairs of a Krishna conscious entity are all seva. In even managing the finances of the temple and helping auditing their accounts also is a type of seva. Because it is not done for oneself but done for the service of the Lord. Raising funds for the temple or for a Krishna conscious program is also seva. So seva can take millions of forms, and it is a consistent observation that those who enthusiastically engage in service make very rapid progress as compared to those who just remain at an intellectual level of understanding philosophy but do not actually translate that into practical seva. So please look for some seva. If you're not sure what seva you can do, you should ask your teachers or your temple authorities. Deity worship. This is the last section we will discuss today. Yeah, we can cover this for the end for today. So deity worship is of two types. Deity worship is the worship of the Archa Vigraha. Remember, there are 5 most potent items of devotional service: chanting the holy names, studying and hearing the Srimad Bhagavat, associating with devotees, worshipping the deity of the Lord, and residing in a holy place of the Lord's pastimes. So deity worship is also a very, very important point. And why it is important? It is important for everybody, but especially for grihasthas. Grihasthas means family people like us. Why it is important? Because grihasthas like us, because we are surrounded by opulent home, our family, and we are our tendency is so strong to focus on ourselves and our own enjoyment. In a temple environment is very easy, right? Krishna is standing there in the center, everybody is trying to serve him. Cannot really lose focus. It's difficult to lose focus. At home, it is very easy to lose focus because we are at the center. So the way to bring focus and to maintain consciousness at home that this is not my home, this is actually belongs to Krishna. The householder is supposed to cultivate a consciousness that it's not my home, this is Krishna's home. This food in this kitchen is not being cooked for me, it is being cooked for the deities at home. And I'm only receiving the prasad. This family is not my family, it is Krishna's family. I'm just taking care of them. So that is the consciousness that a devotee is supposed to develop. And that is why deity worship is very important. Because by establishing deities and worshipping them properly in one's home. And here when we say deity worship, it is not a must that all of you have to buy metal deities and install them. Whether you do that or not, whatever, even they are picture frames at home. The key idea is that you have to give Krishna the place of prominence. And you have to organize the activities of your home around it, which means you have to always remember that he is the owner, proprietor, enjoyer. Bhuktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram saroda sarvabhutana yatva mam shantim. He is the Lord, he is the controller, he is the enjoyer, he is the proprietor. So deities can be made of wood, marble, metal, panchadhatu, or one can have frames of pictures of deities. Especially for worship, it is best, if not deities, and deities also one cannot take for worship, one should ideally not use show pieces. Krishna is sitting under a tree, or Radha and Krishna sitting on a swing. These are show pieces, you can keep it nicely, respectfully somewhere, but they are not for worship. Worship of the Lord has to be done in a very specific form. So Krishna is standing in a specific way. So those forms for worship are, according to Shastra, to be in a particular way. So if one doesn't have deities according to standards, then one can have pictures of the deities. So some devotees will worship the pictures of Radha Madhav from Mayapur, Radha Sham Sundar from Vrindavan. Pictures which are laminated, photos which are laminated, so frames. So that's also a good way. So according to one's means, one can establish a nice altar. Preferably the altar should be in a prominent place so that the Lord is given his due place. It is not that everything else of sense enjoyment is in a prominent place and the Lord is in a corner. Then that means that the Lord is not treated as the boss. The Lord should not be treated as like a maid. Like the maid is given the least important corner in the house to stay. The master stays in the best places. So generally one should be conscious. Of course, if one has a small room which one can actually convert into a puja room, then that is okay. That is not equivalent to this, because if you can have a proper room, that is best. If you cannot have a proper room, then even in the living room also one can give a prominent space. Of course, avoid in the bedroom because one cannot properly show respect to the Lord if the Lord is in the bedroom. Yeah, so that is to be avoided. So living room or a separate room is fine. So if you want to set up an altar and you're not sure how to do it, please reach out to your spiritual teachers and guides to assist you. So best is to have Radha Krishna, Panchatattva, and Narsingadev and the Guru Parampara, the altar. So there's a standard way in which an altar should be set up. So one should do that. Again, for this one can take guidance if one is not sure. So at home, of course, the worship of the deities is not in the same elaborate and technically elaborate way, the way it is done in the temple. So temples, there are a lot of rituals, there are a lot of mantras, upacharas, and much more stricter standards for proper worship. At home, those may not be mandatory to be followed, but general principles of cleanliness should be followed. And what is more important at home is cleanliness, and second is to have a proper mood of devotion. Generally, in deity worship, punctuality is also said to be important, but in a home environment, punctuality is very difficult because if you can follow it is best, but usually the meals don't always happen at In temple 12:20 you have to offer, 12:15 you have to offer. So the 12:30 Aarti can start. So those who are cooking in the kitchen are always looking at time. Finish my offering by the time. Sometimes we may complete our meal at 12, sometimes meals may happen 1:30. So that's okay in a home environment. You don't have to worry too much about that. But at least cleanliness and proper consciousness must be given importance. Another principle is the deities in the temple are more important than our deities at home. So if program in our home is clashing with the program at the temple, temple takes more priority. So that is the culture. So for festivities, better one celebrates the festivities in the temple. So the understanding is our home deities will also come to the temple. So we can worship them there in the temple environment. Minimum requirements. So I think I've already mentioned this. Everything cooked in the home should be offered. It is suggested that Aarti we perform twice a day, the morning and evening, accompanied by Kirtan. Now, this is a recommendation, but at least you should do once a day, if not twice. So the second time, if you don't want to do a full elaborate Aarti, you can just sing Kirtan while you're putting the Lord to rest. That is okay. The general standard in the temple is that all Aartis must be preceded by an offering. So offering and Aarti usually go together. An offering, and as soon as the offering is made, you do an Aarti. So that is the typical process of Naivedya followed by Aarti. Again at home, if you can follow this is okay, but this is not a must, but this is the standard. Yeah, so of course at home, sometimes we may offer multiple times in a day, multiple items. So then obviously we are not expecting you to be following every offering. You offer apple, do Aarti. After some time you come and offer, some sweet, again do Aarti. So at home you may not do that, but in a temple environment, each offering is followed immediately by an Aarti. This is about that during Aarti, one must be careful, must be properly attentive and not talk, gesture, look back. If one has deities at home or pictures at home, it is okay to keep the deities, put them to rest. So once puts the deities to rest by requesting them to rest while the family is out. At home, one can also engage one's children in the worship of the deities at home. But again, the basic standards of cleanliness must be followed. So it's nice to engage all the members of the family when one is bathing the deities, dressing them, worshipping them. That is all very nice. Also for the Grihasthas, another important element is the presence of Tulsidevi. So we should all have Tulsi plant in our home and offer her proper respect, water her regularly, and the leaves from the Tulsi should be offered regularly to the lotus feet of the Lord and used for the offering to the Lord also. This is very purifying. So offerings, it is mandatory to have Tulsi. But of course, if you just happen to not have Tulsi, then do not offer because you don't have Tulsi, then you mentally place the Tulsi. Or you keep some dried Tulsi leaves as a backup in your home. Those are ways in which you can circumvent that situation, but try to keep a stock. I keep a stock of Tulsi leaves in the fridge and then I use from them. Then I replenish it. Tulsi, again to be noted that Tulsi is used only for the worship of Vishnu Tattva. Krishna, Rama, Vamana, Narsingha. Tulsi is not offered to even the Shakti Tattva. Radharani, Lakshmi, we don't offer. Tulsi is not offered to gurus. Tulsi is only for Krishna. Sometimes here in many South Indian temples I have noticed they will use Tulsi garland to worship all the Devatas also. That is improper by Gaudiya Vaishnava standard. Even Radharani is not worshipped by Tulsi. How can you put Tulsi garland around Hanuman or Durga? All those are considered offensive. So Tulsi must be properly respected as a very great devotee. She is the giver of devotion, very dear servant of Krishna. Tulsi Krishna Preyasi. So also while performing sevas which are related to the deities, sevas like stitching the outfits of the deities or making garlands, again proper principles of cleanliness must be used. Sometimes while threading needles, some people use saliva and then put it on the thread and then try to thread the needle like that. So all those things should not be done for garlands. One must be very conscious. Don't touch here and there and then touch the flowers. Because you're going to put the flowers on the deity. Don't put the flowers on the floor. Spread a cloth, clean cloth, and then keep the flowers on that. And then, so you can see that whenever in temple you go, you'll see that the flowers are scattered, but they are scattered not on the floor but on the cloth. And then others are doing. They're very careful that the flowers don't touch their feet, don't fall off. So all those things must be done. The best is to use fresh, fragrant flowers. That is the ideal standard. Do not use withered flowers. Generally, they should be avoided. Best is to use fragrant. Of course, if fragrant flowers are not at all available, better to use. I mean, it is still okay to use some flower than no flowers, but the best is to use fragrant flowers. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Any questions or comments? So please remember, next time we will start from austerity, H here. And for the previous one, we have to start from appendix 1.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, you said that the temple deities is priority and the home deity should be put to rest. What does that mean?
No, what we are saying is
not you
these are two
said, it
different.
was written in the book. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are two different things. So put to rest, we discussed in the context of if we are traveling, right? So what some devotees do when they are traveling is there are 2-3 options. One is some devotees take their deities with them wherever they go and travel, but that may not be practical. They want to, continue to do their seva wherever. So that may not always be possible or practical for everyone. Then in that case, it is okay to leave the deities at home. We are talking about home deities here, not temple deities, to put them to rest. And then, travel for pilgrimages and other things. Sometimes what devotees do is they pass their deities and they keep it in the home of another devotee where they can also be worshipped because they have deities. So there are multiple options, but what the book is saying is that if no other option is available, then one can, for home deities, one can put them to rest while one is traveling. So that is one point. The other point, which is about temple deities, are more important. The point is sometimes what devotees do is when there is a festival in the temple, they feel that they must attend to their deities and celebrate festival with their deities rather than attending the program in the temple. So that kind of a consciousness is not the best consciousness, best attitude. One should give preference to celebration in the temple as compared to worship at home. So whenever there's a clash, and this happens typical on festivals, right? Festivals, it is best to worship the temple deities because the temple deities are the focus of the congregation. So in such cases, the detailed observance, whatever basic seva one does at home, our daily aartis and daily offerings one can do. But the detailed observance of the festival can be done in a temple, and one doesn't need to replicate that at home. That is the point. Correct? For
yes,
example,
Prabhu.
for example, if there is an abhishek, if it is not possible to do abhishek for your deities also and attend the temple deities abhishek, then the preference should be given to the temple deities abhishek.
Oh, okay. No, because we do abhishek every day, Prabhu, but so on festivals, We do
Mataji, all we are
ours.
saying is, no, whoever can do both, it's perfectly okay. There is no question about that. The question is when it is not possible to do both, then the temple takes priority. That is the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. So if you are doing already for at your home upfront at a earlier time, that is wonderful. We are not saying don't worship your deities or don't celebrate festivals at home. We are saying that do not sacrifice the temple program of the worship of the deities for your own deity worship. That is the point.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Haribol. How are you?
Hari bol. Yeah, I am good, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, I put some questions in my comments also.
Why don't you tell them out loud?
Okay, okay. So, Prabhuji, my first question is: suppose in the in our plate, some small hair we found while eating. So, shall we leave that complete food, or just leave that portion of the hair and just only small hair? Yeah.
Okay. So there are two things. One is if the hair falls before the offering, which means you are not even offered to the Lord, right? If it
Yeah.
falls in the offering, then that item in which the hair has fallen in a temple, you cannot offer it. That is the standard. Okay. Now, if something has already been made prasad, you are sitting with your plate and one of your hair drops into the food.
No, actually, like offered already, and then while eating,
That's what I'm saying.
after half eating half of the food, I found some small hair.
Yeah.
So
So
what should we do?
yeah. So you should just remove the hair and then you cannot throw away the prasad. Otherwise, you'll end up throwing most of the food which is cooked.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So while offering to the Lord, one has to be careful, especially in a temple environment. Yeah. At home, I think it is not unusual to find some piece of hair in the later, either when we are eating or whatever. So one must be careful. But if it happens to be found, then I'm assuming it is not dog hair or cat hair.
Yeah,
So,
one more question. Like the in Tulsi, we can offer our deities when we are giving the prasad to deities, or some fruits we are offering to our deities. Can we put Tulsi also in their plate, to our deities plate?
yeah, we must put in our home. Even in our home offerings, tulsi is a must.
Okay, to
Even if
all
it
our
is for
deities, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like not only Krishna, all our deities,
No.
Hanuman
So
or
so
Jagannath.
no. Okay, so when I say put tulsi, you're talking about placing the tulsi in the offering. So if there's a fruit, you put the tulsi on the fruit. Okay. So if you are talking about offering some item to Hanuman, right? The standard that we follow, the recommended standard to offer to the devatas, the recommended standard is to offer it to Krishna first, and then that Krishna's prasad we offer it to the devata. Okay? That is the best standard. Because the devatas also eat Vishnu prasad.
Okay, okay. So actually, offering also Guru also together, yeah, the prasad. So yeah, so
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it is not
So
good.
even to Guru, yeah. See, I mean, technically the Guru can offer it to Krishna. If one offers in that consciousness, is okay, but it is best. Even in the Vyas Puja of the spiritual masters, we first offer it to Krishna, and then those offerings are placed in front of the Guru. That is the standard we follow in ISKCON also. We offer it to deities. From the deities, then the Mahaprasad. The Mahaprasad already have Tulsi because the Tulsi was used to offer to the Lord. So then you don't have to remove the Tulsi because you are offering the Prasad Tulsi to the Guru. You're not offering Tulsi to the Guru. Correct? Yeah, that is the point. So we don't place Tulsi at the feet of the Guru or offer to the picture of the Guru. That we don't do. But if the prasad of Vishnu already has tulsi, then when we offer the prasad, we don't have to take the tulsi. The tulsi can be offered as prasad to the spiritual master and the devatas.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Prabhuji. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Of course, very strictly speaking, technically, even though this is the recommended process, the devatas, if you approach the devatas with the proper consciousness that they are devotees and offer something to them, with the request that they should offer it to the Lord, that is also okay. If we do with that consciousness, but it is best for us to follow the recommended standard by Prabhupada is offer to Krishna first and then offer to devotees. Because just think about it, no? If we as ordinary sadhakas are supposed to eat only Krishna Prasad, do you think the devatas will be eating items which are not Krishna Prasad? They don't. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
That prasadam first we have to offer to our guru, and then from guru we can offer to Krishna, because we are not qualified to directly offer to Krishna, right? Because we are at so much contamination at body.
So what we do is we place the offering in front of Krishna, but we take permission of Guru or we request the Guru to offer it to Krishna. So that is why so we don't actually place in front of Guru and offer to Guru, even though that's also one way to look at it. Some people do like that, but the general recommendation that Prabhupada gives is one places the offering in front of Krishna with the Tulsi and then prays to Guru. Because when we start our offering, we say the mantras, no? Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale.
Yeah.
So we say Guru. So when we are reciting that Guru's mantra before reciting Krishna's mantra, what are we praying to Guru? We are praying to Gurus, I am offering this to you, you please offer it to Krishna. Right? And then finally we take Krishna's pranam mantra and where we are saying Krishna please accept it. Right? So that is why we approach, we say the Guru mantra, our Guru, Prabhupada, then we pray to Lord Chaitanya. So the understanding is Guru will give to, Prabhupada will give to Lord Chaitanya will give it to Radha and Krishna. That is the understanding. So that is a meditation. One doesn't have to physically move the plate like this. Physically you can keep the plate in front of Krishna. That is okay.
And one more thing, Prabhuji. Today I went to temple. So there I got flowers, Prabhuji. So
sorry, there you got what?
Flowers, which was offered to deities.
Okay.
So that excessive flowers, so can be reused to the god at home, or how?
No. If flower is already offered, what is it? Is it offered flower or not offered flower?
Offered flowers only.
Offered flower is prasad already. So prasad cannot be offered again to the Lord. So that offered flower, you can smell it.
Yes.
You can keep it in a clean place in your home.
Okay.
Until it dries. After it is dried, it is to be treated like nirmalya. And we have spoken about that. Disposed in a proper way according to the standards of nirmalya. It cannot be reused. An offered item cannot be reoffered.
Because today I got some flowers, so I don't know what to do with that flowers.
Yeah, so you can just keep it for some time until once it's dry. So next day you can keep it with the same flowers that you take out from your deities, and you put it together, right? I'm assuming you are gathering it somewhere and then treating it as nirmalya and then disposing according to nirmalya rule. So you can mix it with that once it has dried. That's okay. Garland, sometimes we get garlands from the deities, so we can smell it, we can place it on our neck for some time as prasad. One cannot throw it into the garbage. It will become offense.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful. Thank you. So we will end here if there is no other questions. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of your enthusiasm for joining on a Sunday as well. And we'll see you on Wednesday where we'll continue our discussion on the 18th chapter. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Pranam.
Krishna.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Ji,
Thank you,
Shraddha ji,
Prabhuji.
Anita
Thank
ji,
you.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Sachi Prema Mata ji, Sudhir Sundar Prabhu, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Archana ji and Amma, Hare Krishna. Ankan, nice to see you after a long time. All
Thank you,
well?
Prabhuji.
All
Yeah,
well?
Prabhuji. Yeah, Prabhuji.
Very good. I'm so happy you are practicing Krishna consciousness nicely, offering, reading. How is your Bhagavatam reading going on? Going well?
No, Prabhuji.
No.
Only the audio I sometimes, yeah.
That's okay.
I
Okay.
not
I'm happy.
reading is not going on. That
But
sometimes
you're
the
listening.
audio.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
At least in some way. Hearing, reading, as we discussed today, yeah. Reading is more absorbing, but if you cannot read, at least hear.
Yeah, that reading writing is not going on. I need more time now. Completely busy with work and family, all these things.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
No worries, no worries. Carry on. Thank you, Siniji. Thank you. Haribo. Okay. Sapna ji, thank you to you also and take care. Hare Krishna. Anand Sundari Mataji also. Yes, Haribo, Aditi. How are you? Anybody wanted to say something? I just heard some sound.